session. I'll keep adding into the chat our attendance link for people who come in every time I see the numbers of participants change. But we will start us off with our, and it looks like we have no one new, so I'm just going to go quickly through our acknowledgements and our recognitions. As always, you have the option to add into the chat box any resources that you have for us, or your own acknowledgements that you would like to share. We have, of course, our land acknowledgement, and now we have a recognition of the racism in the United States. And I wish I would have had time to add another one to the lives being lost in Israel and Palestine and Gaza, and all of that situation right now is so complicated and so tragic when you think of the thousands of lives and being lost, especially children's lives. So for them, for everyone, we'll offer a moment of silence. Thank you. If there's anybody who would like to share anything, process, I do invite that, because we are in challenging times. I mean, I think it was a month or two ago when we had the earthquake in Morocco, where I was a Peace Corps volunteer, and then we had the floods in, I think it was Libya, and then the earthquakes in Yemen, and now with what's going on in Israel, Gaza, and it's all West Bank, and of course more mass shootings here. We have to give ourselves and each other grace, don't we? Let's just take a deep breath and acknowledge when we're going through a lot, and look forward to the weekend that's coming up, and I hope that you get to spend time with your loved ones. All right, for those of you who have come in, thank you for changing your name to your district. If you've come in since I had the poll up and you are new, you haven't been to any classes with me, please put a shout out in the chat box. That will give me an idea. Because if not, I'm going to zoom through these things that people who've been with me before already know. Asking you to please change your name to add on your district, to keep your video on if possible. That's always appreciated. Thank you, Janice and Laura. Oh, and I turn the second page and look at every 6 of you have. You're awesome. So it all depends on when you're speaking or not. Muting when not talking. But again, if there's no noise in the background, I'm fine with that. Raising your hand electronically, annotating, and jumping in. Okay, so I do like to pause here and see if there's anything anyone would like to connect to today. And I think for me, it's in light of all the things that I had to say, I think it's the building relationships piece. I think to those I was close to in Morocco, I think to everyone who is, Trish, I think that, I wish I'd chosen a heart instead of a check mark, but I had already checked it. There's a lot that we need to be embracing each other with and for right now. So, and have hope that we can make it a better place. And maybe that's the growth mindset is our hope. There's my little stamp. There we go. Whoops. Didn't mean to go there. Let's try that again. There we go. But it's an invitation to collaborate. And if there's something I missed that you'd like to add, please do so in the chat. The same thing with our agreements of how we work together with each other. Oh, someone was circling. Yes, that most important word, right, everyone? All. That all students can learn. My sigh is because I listened to a video the other day, and I showed it to my daughter of somebody who was college age, who was struggling with what she called her imaginary friend named Lexi, whom when she got older, she learned was actually named Dyslexia, and who was always telling her she wasn't good enough or smart enough, and she never would be. And my daughter said, why? And I said, well, maybe she didn't have the kind of advocate that you have in me. And she didn't understand and didn't get the learning and learn how to read in a way that worked for her. So it's that all students are really important there. All right. Not seeing anything adding to this, but you all were always welcome to do so. Kathy, I'm going to go ahead and mute you. There was a bit of scratching, but feel free to unmute at any time. These are our reminders. I should call them reminders at this point. Oh, Kathy, you're outside. Hope you're being safe. We have our goals, which is something that I would love for us to kind of comment on. How we've done so far. It's been a whirlwind. We've had this is our 13th and 14th hour together. And those of you who've been able to be with us this whole time, as Janice and I were talking before everyone came in, if you missed any, you can connect with me and you can watch the videos and connect with me about making up clock hours. It will also be repeated again in January and February. So you can see it, come and join live again and see what else I've learned that we can add to. There are also long full day opportunities about each of these topics as well. That next week we'll be doing a whole full class on phonology. So I'm just going to give you a moment to reflect upon these goals. Add something into the chat box. If there's something you feel like we haven't done enough of, I can always add it on to next time, or we can see what we can do today. And I'll pull it into this way so you can see the different categories. And I'm going to pause and give us a moment for me to open up the floor and to see if there's somebody who has something that's been circling since we last met that you want to bring up, or a question, or a connection to anything, something you've tried since last week that you'd like to share with us.
I have a question.
Hi, Laura.
Hi. So one of the things, this is a pretty simple question, and pretty common. It's just like, what the kids will just ask, how do I spell this word? And it's always random. It's always a different word. But like today it was accidentally. And I am always like, okay, pause for a second, think of all the things. What should I do? What's the best way? And my brain gets all fluttered. So what would you suggest?
Especially if we have a flutter, we take a deep breath.
Yeah.
And what you accidentally is a great example where we can start with the morphemes and then go to the syllables. So I think about accidentally. What's your base word on that? Well, your base word is accident, isn't it? Yeah. So I'm going to start with that. And then I'm going to start with, how do I spell accident? Accident. I'm going to go syllable by syllable here. Now I'm going to go with a little bit skinnier here, not a shape, a line. First syllable was ac. Now what, the line, not a, oh dear, line width, draw. Okay, there we go. So my first syllable was ac. How do you think that's spelled? Okay, I have an A-C. Now I have ac-ci, and then dent. See, it's easier for me to do it in cursive with a mouse. There we go. Accident. Now, it is weird that it's the I, but if you think about, remember that where's the accent? The strong syllable. I was just reading Lynn Stone's Spelling for Life, and she talked about how syllables are either strong or weak, which I think is a little clearer than talk about where the accent is, because we get so confused with, well, I have a Southern accent or this accent. So if we think about which is the strong syllable, accident, this is the strong one. This one's weak, and therefore it doesn't really play by its rules as far as its sound. Okay, you said accidentally. Now I have a suffix al, which makes it accidental. And then I have a suffix ly, which means how. Now I can put it together. Do you see I've broken it apart, and then I can be putting it back together? So it is a process. I mean, that's a huge one. And so like when my daughter says, how do I spell this? I'm like, well, what do you think? And then we'll work through it and we'll talk.
Okay, that helps to talk about the morphology and then go to syllables. I think that is kind of where I go first, but then I'm like, okay, am I doing this in the right order? Is that's helping them learn how to spell it on their own? So,
Yes.
okay.
And somebody could say, okay, well, why is it not an S in accident? Well, you can tell them it's Latin. With a Latin base, you're probably going to have a C instead. And I'd have to look up the word accident to understand its history, but I would bet you, in fact, that this is where I could say when they say, well, why? If they say, why is it a C, not an A? I'm actually, I mean, an S. Well, like I said, number one, you can tell with all those suffixes, and you can tell with that even ac right there is a prefix. But I would, if it were with one of my kids, I'd say, all right, let's go to Adam Online. Let's look it up and see why. Let's look up the word accident. Whoops, I meant to go in Adam Online, not typing accident. There we go. Adam Online, and we'll look up accident and see. And Latin accidentum, for the prefix AD, meaning you can go look at the prefix of that. It's the combining form of cadere, or whatever that, however you pronounce it. I think that's very interesting. And so you could find out other words that are related to it. But in general, if I have a sound in those Latin-based words, unless it's at the beginning, it's probably going to be that CI. And that's where I'd look it up. And I'd say, oh, what else is by add? Remember, we did the add prefix. Okay, Trish, you asked about the AC as a prefix. Remember, add and AC are that chameleon. Look how we have it: affection, aggression. It could be AG, AL, and that AC is the same as the AD. It's an assimilated, because accident is harder to say than accident, so it slips to a C instead of a D. Hence that prefix. Remember when we did chameleon prefixes? I think that one was on our list. I can jump back to this. When did we talk about it? Morpheme identification. Here we go. Common prefixes. Here are our chameleons. Remember, yep, there's add. We have account and aggressive and appear. That AD gets, it shifts along depending on pronunciation. Hope that helps, Laura.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else? Whether I'm jumping back to where we were. Let's see. I think we are here. Nope. Yep. Anyone else have something you'd like to raise? All right, let's jump in then. Lastly, our text comprehension and written expression. I don't think we have anyone new with us, so I will go briefly through. I appreciate somebody new that put it already into the chat, who you are and where you're from. Thank you, Deborah. I'll also make sure that everybody gets the attendance link. And we also have our Jamboard that I'll grab in a moment, so we can put that in and be sharing there as well. But the people whom I will introduce on this slide, with me on the largest one is Marianne Wolf, who wrote the Ran Rass, and she wrote the book, The Proust and the Squid, who is absolutely amazing. And up in the upper right-hand corner is Janine Herron, who wrote a book. I'll have to get off my shelf for you in a bit. And then down at the bottom is Nancy Young, who made that ladder of reading. So yeah, I like to go and take pictures with the people whom I admire. So I'll share them with you. But here's another opportunity for you to do some sharing. Let's take a breath. And as we know, there's a lot going on. Where would you go if you could for a little bit of self-care? Last time we had some books and shows for self-care. Where would you go to be just you? Not an obligation, but a vacation. I'll give you for that for a moment while I go and get Janine Herron's book to share with you. All right, things are coming in. A little bit of fun before we get started. Any warm beach. Ooh, Switzerland, New Zealand, Maldives. Camino. Where's that, Trish? A lot of interesting places. Fun for me. Let's see. Oh, I'd love to travel and see new places. but I agree with anybody who has a little bit of Caribbean right now. Sounds awfully good. Someplace to hike. Oh, I've always wanted to see Jordan though, and Petra. Awesome. A nice, oh, it's a walk. Thank you. I'll have to look into that. Okay. So today we're talking about text comprehension and written expression. I didn't ask about the written expression in our survey because I was really talking about the base and the foundational skills. But I do want to point out a couple of things as we're here, is that studies have found that when students write about their learning in any subject, that it boosts their understanding and their retention. Cognitive science helps explain why. It's a powerful way to get information to stick in long-term memory, and to ensure you can retrieve it is to recall it and explain it to someone else, putting it into your own words, which is basically what we do when we write. This came from a site, hopefully this link will work for you, from Natalie Wexler. But it's really the link between reading and writing is extremely powerful. And the more that we write to read and read to write, the two skills support each other. So that's one of the places I wanted to, oh, did I? Never mind. I didn't realize I already had that in there for you. So this is what I was just reading. So I'll give you a moment with it and you can take a look into that as well. And I will grab the Jamboard. There's been a lot going on. Writing and reading, two sides of the same coin. Okay. Okay. So let's jump into that last piece of the semantics. Remember our simple view of reading. And if you focus that onto our reading comprehension, our language comprehension, and our word reading, we are bringing all those pieces together. Today, we're talking more about the language comprehension strand, but it's really that text comprehension and written expression that you see up there in the corner. Janice, good question. You ask, does it matter if the words are correctly written? Should the student be able to read it back? Yes. At the same time, the connection in thought is your first goal to what you've been reading. Should they be able to read it back? That's the next step. And so getting their ideas out as quickly as possible, as doing brainstorms, doing listing is going to be a great skill for them to be able to get agile. But then, of course, we want to be able to have the handwriting as well, because that's an important piece so that they can be able to read what they're writing. And then the next step, of course, if they want others to be able to read it, then we need to make sure it's going along with the conventions of language. So it's a step-by-step process. But also we need to think about, where do we punctuate? Where do we annotate? Where do we stop our sentences? So I'm going to ask someone to read this aloud for us. And there may be, as that person's reading, there may be somebody who's thinking of a different interpretation. So I'm going to give you a moment and read these silently first. Then I'm going to check and volunteer. And when you read it aloud, please stop where you would put a period, and I'll put it in and I'll annotate that for you. And then you can start the new sentence. So this is a paragraph without punctuation. And I want you to think about, where would you punctuate it? Where would you stop and start a new thought? I'm going to pause and stop talking so you can read.
I can read it.
Okay, Jerry, go ahead.
Dear John, I want a man who knows what love is all about. Period. You are generous, kind, thoughtful. Period.
Right.
People who are not like you admit to being useless and inferior. Period. You have ruined me for other men, period. I yearn for you, comma, I have no feelings whatsoever when we're apart,
I put
period.
semicolons and says,
Yeah,
okay, you're stopping here.
I can be forever happy,
Okay.
period. Will you let me be yours, comma.
How about a question mark?
Oh, yeah, question mark.
Okay.
Gloria,
All right. Does
that's
somebody
the worst letter.
does somebody have a different interpretation?
Oh, there go my lights. I was going to talk. I'm in the
Okay.
dark.
Let me get
After
your
she
color.
read it, I was thinking, I put the same period after thoughtful,
Mhm.
kind, thoughtful, but then I think a period after generous would be better. So
How about stopping here? I want a man who knows what love is all about. Or how about this one? Who knows what love is? All about you are kind, generous, thoughtful people who are not like you. How's this shifting? Let me get my pencil back. Who are not like you. Admit to being useless and inferior. You have ruined me. For other men, I yearn. For you, I have no feelings whatsoever. When we're apart, I can be forever happy. Will you let me be? Yours, Gloria. How did that shift into? I can see Janice is laughing. It went from a Dear John letter to a kind of a breakup letter, right? So from a love letter to a breakup letter. Let me see how well we did. I'm going to clear all that off, and I'll show you an example. This is actually one that has two different versions, and I'll get you a link to, I think they've changed it from Dear John and Gloria or something here, but here are the two different versions here. You are kind, generous, thoughtful. This is kind of like what Cherry was reading for us. I have no feelings further when we're apart. When I can be forever happy, will you let me be yours? Versus, I want a man who knows what love is. So you can see how I even started with, I want a man who knows what love is. Versus, I want a man who knows what love is. Where you see they're a little bit different. All about you are kind, generous, thoughtful people who are not like you. Admit to, like, you ruined me. So notice just the different punctuation changes the meaning so much. And this is what our kids need to understand, is that in their head, it might have been one thing versus the other. But once they put it on text, if they want others to get the same message, they have to punctuate it in a way that will convey that same message. So this is when we're talking about how to get the message off of it for understanding, that's the comprehension piece, and how to express ourselves in ways that people will get the same message we had intended. So I just want you to think about that when it comes to this language comprehension. To understand this, we needed to know more than the words, didn't we? We needed to know the punctuation, the stopping, the grammar, where those were going to be. So when we're talking about the language comprehension side, here we go. We're getting, remember the reading rope. There we go. We're focusing on the background knowledge today, and we're focusing on those syntax, semantics, those language structures. So we're focusing on that side of the reading rope. We're going to start with the reading comprehension, and I want you to think about what activities can we do before we read, during reading, and after reading, so that we are structuring success for our students. So number one, with before reading, we can build our background knowledge, and we can help our students with their vocabulary. And these tips actually come to us from Louise Spear-Swerling's book. And Louise is amazing, by the way, very, very sweet. I'm looking for her book. It's Structured Literacy Interventions for Kids in K-6. So if somebody wants to find that link and put it in, we can find it, or I'll find it when you're in your breakouts. Yes, Janice, commas and periods make a difference. During reading, we want to help them understand that main idea. That's really, I hate the word generation, because they're not the ones generating their idea unless they're writing. They're discovering what the author had intended was the main idea. And sometimes, so it's more of an idea discovery than generation. But then we can also question and make sure they're connecting to and understanding it as the author had intended, or by which you could tell by the punctuation and the intent and the content. After reading, then of course, let's make sure that we are reusing those vocabulary words that we found in the text, so then we can apply them to our next learning. And of course, that summary really brings everything together. So this is from this one right here. I'm going to bring up. Oh, did I say the from here? I did. Nancy Hennessy has a great book called The Reading Comprehension Blueprint. Very, very dense. I want to do a book study on it. I haven't had a chance yet, because it is, if you really, really want to get onto reading comprehension, you want this book. I can grab it for you if you like, and talk in a moment. I did grab the one by Janine Herron, Making Speech Visible. She is fantastic. She has some great letters back in the back to help our kids, for our youngest learners. Again, a very speech to print, starting with writing words, not reading them. So Nancy Hennessy's background knowledge piece, she calls the ABCs of background knowledge. What are we doing to activate and assess our kids' background knowledge? What are we doing to build it? And what are we doing to connect it as they're reading, so that they're connecting what they're learning to what they already know? So I'm just going to pause here, and I want you to pick a prompt, a stamp on those you are familiar with, those you use, and feel free to put a question mark next to one that you are not as familiar with, or put something into the chat box. So I'll pause and I'll grab a couple books while you're doing that. Okay, I didn't find my reading comprehension blueprint, but here's the one by Louise Spear Swerling I referenced. The Structured Literacy Interventions, Teaching Students with Reading Difficulties, Grades K through 6. I'll make sure that all of these are in my book list that I will show you where to find it. Lots of love for our activation experiences. Oh, field trips. Wouldn't it be nice if we did some of those as well? This is why, folks, we have such a difference when kids come to school. And this is where we have the situation between the haves and the have-nots, is that those of us who can afford to take our kids on trips and to field trips and to, there are many kids who have never left their town. My kids have lived in 3 different states. But the question, and they're lucky, we have family all over the country. Well, not in the South, but many places for them to be building those background knowledge, and it gives them that Velcro for their new learning to stick to. This is what we need to find ways to give to our kids in schools to equalize for those kids who don't have the privilege that mine do. Lauren has added on the graphic organizers. All right, looks like we've got lots of appreciation and recognition for things here. Not as much for the multiple theme text, but that's, again, as we're building on knowledge, and the more we learn things in different ways, the stronger we're going to be building the connections in our brain. Okay, so Lorna, if you have, do you have what kind of device are you on, Lorna? A Chromebook. I think I've heard.
Sorry, I don't know why I decided to type and not mute. I don't know where my head is.
I think I've heard the Chromebooks, you can't do annotations.
Oh, you can? Okay. Okay.
Sure, so we'll have to correct me if I'm wrong on that. But thanks for putting into the chat. I'd like to give options. All right, we're going to clear that off. And I'm going to share with you one of my favorite, it's whoops, went the wrong way on that. You could call it a way to build and activate and assess. And this comes from Tony Stead, and it's called RAN, which is really unfortunate because we think of rapid automatized naming. But this stands for reading and analyzing nonfiction. And I like it as an alternative to the KWL. And I actually use it sometimes with my students in when I'm teaching in professional development as well. Now with the adults, I would use these categories you see along the top with what I think I know, confirmed, misconception, new learning, and wonderings. Now the key to this is, unlike the KWL where you have a poster and you have a marker, is with the RAN you use stickies. And those little sticky notes then can be moved from, let's say I have a sticky note, I'm going to get my vanishing pen here on what I think I know, and then I do some learning and I move it to confirmed I was right. Or I have a sticky note on what I think I know and I move it to misconceptions because my new learning, I realize I was wrong. So then I've got a place to add on my new learnings and my wonderings as well. You see here in this picture an example of a second grade teacher using it with what we think we know. And instead of confirm, it's yes, like I was right. And oops, I was wrong. And new information and wonderings. So if you haven't used something like a KWL, what I know, what I want to know, what I've learned, I like this additional category here of confirmed versus much misconception. I think that's a useful way to be looking at background knowledge. But let's jump in back. Remember our word reading piece. We're going to focus in today on that semantics piece. And remember, I'm just going to bring everything up so we can have this reminder of how we get words to stick. Well, focusing in on that semantics, again, this comes from Nancy Hennessy's book. She talks about how do we really know words? We know them in many complex ways. I'm realizing that's backwards. I'm going to have to fix that next time. But that's okay. You'll ride with me. That knowing words in complex names, we've talked about morphemes, haven't we? Thank you for, I think it was Laura who brought up the word accidental. We understand that the AL makes it into an adjective, and then accidentally, that LY makes it into an adverb. Accident is a noun, but then, so you can see how it changes when I add these different morphemes. And so I understand that contributes my understanding of the word. But then I have to think about what semantic category. Now that's a lot harder with a very abstract word like accident. Although, let's see, an accident could be in the category of for a natural disaster, could be a larger category of things that are bad. A natural disaster, a hurricane, so you can see how you can categorize them. I usually use something more complex for semantic category like trees. If a trees is your category, you could list lots of different kinds of trees under that category. Those would be these subcategories of tree would be, you'd have coniferous and you'd have deciduous. But even tree is a subcategory of plant life, which is a subcategory of a live thing. So you can see how we can categorize. That's what we do naturally. So that's when we talk about semantic categories, we're talking about being able to group things. Now, syntactic category, that's our part of speech. The connotation is what it feels like. So the denotation would be the dictionary definition, but the connotation is the feeling of it. So if I say, for example, the difference between thin and skinny, they technically mean the same thing, right? But they have a different feel to them. Just like pushy and aggressive have a different feel to them. That's the connotation, is the feeling. And then, of course, how do I use it in text? I might use it, for example, don't beat around the bush is a very different use of bush than I think about an actual bush in my yard. So you think about all the different ways of learning words. This is what we're talking about when we're talking about semantics. We're talking about, I should have put this on the syntax one, but words and constructions, we're talking about syntax and we're talking about vocabulary. Vocabulary is the semantics piece. Syntax we talked about last time. This is one of the things that I want to draw attention to, and this one is the fact that, again, Natalie Wexler in the Knowledge Gap, is that it is, how do I put this? Remember in the past I've been saying that speech is expressed through print, and that print is a representation of speech that is imperfect, but predictable. This is an extension of that. that imperfect relationship between speech and print. Because number one, we don't write things like and and I would have a hard time with those. But two, look at the difference in complexity between what we read and what we might hear. So let's take a look at this. We need our kids to be familiar with those differences between written and spoken language. Written language is almost always more complex. Different words and constructions like the passive voice, things you just don't hear in conversation. If kids are going to understand that syntax, the vocabulary in their independent reading, they need to get used to it through listening to written text read aloud to them. They need to be exposed to it. Lots of reading, and lots of listening. Okay, this is what I was saying I should have done first. My apologies. Is when I'm talking about semantics, I'm talking about words, which is what we were looking at with those yellow circles, and I'm talking about beyond the words, the sentential semantics. There's a lot here, I know. Because frankly, the language comprehension, if I could pull that back up, there's a lot here when it comes to understanding. So number one, we have to understand words and their relationships. Then we have to understand how those words are put together into sentences. So notice with words themselves, my verbal knowledge comprises of networks, associations built up in time. Remember if I gave you the example of the word bat before? And I can know it as an animal. I can know it as something I do. And I look at it in baseball. The more I know about baseball, the more I know about being a batter. These are my words and concepts known in relation to each other. But then when I go beyond the word level, I remember we talked last time about phrases and how the words are used together. Another thing that's very difficult for some of our kids are those substituted words and phrases like pronouns. If I say the word, if I see in text a he or a she, I have to know to whom I'm referring. And conjunctions can change completely the intent and what it means. So when I'm talking about sentential semantics, I'm talking about the meanings of sentences. And I have to think about the glue that brings those sentences together. Those referential devices are called we call them the glue. Like if I say, until I was hungry, or if there was, I don't think I used the example last time of the, I'm going to pause this and see if I used, because last time when we talked about grammar, we ran out of time to do a piece about, here it is. We didn't have time to do this. So let me share this because I think it's really useful to illustrate what I was just talking about with the grammatical glue and the way how individual conjunctions can change the meaning. So can I get a volunteer to read these sentences for us? And as you read these, I want you to think about it as you hear them. What is the meaning difference just by changing that one first word?
I can read. Oh,
thanks, Sarah. She's got her hand up.
okay, cool.
While I studied, my sister ran screaming through the house.
Hey, that tells me when, right? Mm-hmm.
After I studied, my sister ran screaming through the house.
Not as much of a problem, huh?
Mm-mm. Before I studied, my sister ran screaming through the house.
Hopefully she stopped before I studied. Mm-hmm.
Because I studied, my sister ran screaming through the house.
I'd be curious on that one. That one tells us why.
Yeah. Although I studied, my sister ran screaming through the house.
I'd be frustrated. Mm-hmm.
And whenever I studied, my sister ran screaming through the house.
So this has a different kind of every single time implication. Notice how much that changes just with that one word.
Yeah.
So while you need to understand that one word, but that phrase, I studied, preceded by that conjunction, totally shifts meaning, doesn't it?
Definitely.
So this is where our complexity gets. This seems simple for us, but for our kids, they're going to need some help and some instruction with this and understanding what those different subordinating conjunctions mean. Here's a list of them if we wanted to help them understand these. But the understanding comes in use, because by themselves, these are hard to explain, aren't they? Because, well, that tells why, even though, well, that that also tells when, but it also has an implication of I was doing something and I didn't want that person to be doing. You notice it takes a lot to explain some of these. So this is where we want to think about it. So if I said, even though I studied, my sister ran screaming through the house, that would be another layer of different understanding and meaning. So we want to think about all of the complexity that goes into our language comprehension piece. All right, so that's the beyond word level. We're going to start though, there's a lot we can do on comprehension, but because I want to make sure we get to the extension of what we did last time. So remember last time we were structuring these phrases to doing pre-reading. Now we're going to go into the during reading piece. But to support that, there was one thing I skipped. I won't. I'm going to go back to this. So when we talked about the levels of semantics, remember I mentioned we have the sentential and the words. We'll go back to that. The semantics and meanings of those individual words here, and then sentences. We're going to go into first, let's listen, as we had in that passage. Then we're going to talk about the reading, understanding words. Then we're going to talk about sentences and longer text. So we're going to get into, here's some supports for you. Oh, I clicked that, sorry. Let me put that in the chat box for you and put that back. Resource for you that I clicked accidentally. There we go. Okay. Sorry about that. There we go. It's been a crazy day. I was having internet issues earlier, and we'll take a deep breath, right? Okay. So reading comprehension of longer text, which is where we're going to go. That's where I'm talking about the beyond the word level. We'll go into that. So last time we talked about phrases a little bit. Remember, we could have a noun phrase, a verb phrase, or the prepositional phrases could be adjectival or adverbial. Next, we talk about clauses. We saw some examples. Deborah just read some for us. Thank you, Deborah. Remember, those clauses can have a subject and a verb, but they can stand alone, like I like chocolate, or they cannot stand alone, like all those ones that started with those conjunctions that she read. And then I can get into complexities of sentences. And if we have time, we'll get into talking about what each of those are if you want to have your mind blown. If not, we'll just acknowledge that, yes, sentences can be either simple, compound. I can give you a little bit of those if you want. For those of you who are less familiar with those, we have a simple sentence is a subject and a verb, or multiple subjects and multiple verbs. We still have one separation of them, one clause, which would be an independent clause. The compound would be two independent clauses that you'll remember you can either connect with a semicolon or a comma and a coordinating conjunction. Complex would be a dependent clause and an independent clause. And then a compound complex would be a dependent, independent, and both of these. So you can get much more complex in our speaking. Those poor kids, right? And then, of course, the text that you get to can be either narrative or expository. So that kind of complexity, let's support our kids. So this is the during reading piece. Remember what we saw last time with the person pulling phrases out from pre-reading? Some of these phrases you saw last week in the pre-reading that we did for you. I'm going to do this with you as a whole group, and then we're going to watch the middle school teacher doing it again, and then we'll give you an opportunity to chat about what you've seen and what you've experienced. Okay. So, and you're going to get a chance to practice it. So I'm going to need at least 4 people to, preferably 3 or 4 people to unmute and to read along with me, please. I'm going to structure this for you using the phrases and the clauses that we learned about last time, but in text. I do it a little bit differently than the person that is on the video, so I want you to see both. So if you're willing to volunteer to read, please unmute. Thank you, Kathy. Thank you, Lorna. Thank you, Laura. I need one more. Deborah. All right. Kathy, I think you were the first one I saw. So Kathy, will you please read the first 3 words in this passage? We're not reading the green part, we're in the passage itself, okay? Please read the first 3 words that tell us who.
Thomas A. Edison.
Thank you, Lorna. The next word tells us what he did. One word first, please, Lorna.
Inventor? Do you want me to read the whole sentence?
Nope, she read for us Thomas A. Edison, and I want you to read the next word.
Oh, lived.
Deborah, when did he live?
From 1847 to 1931.
Thank you. Laura, will you reread that sentence, pausing at the phrases, please?
Thomas A. Edison lived from 1847 to 1931.
Thank you. I'm going to go backwards. Deborah, will you please read for us the next 3 words?
He is called.
What is he called, Lorna?
One of the greatest inventors.
Where are we talking about, Kathy?
In the world.
Okay, I ended on Laura again. Sorry, I'll skip you and go to Deborah. Will you please reread that and pausing at the phrases?
He is called one of the greatest inventors in the world.
Thank you, Laura. I'll start with you this time. Will you please read us the next 2 words that tell us what?
His inventions.
Tell me about those inventions, Kathy. What did they do, or have they done?
Improved the lives of millions of people.
Thank you. Now, if she had stopped and said, have improved the lives, I could say which lives? And then Lorna could say of millions of people. Or if she just said of millions of what? I'd keep her going. Okay, Lorna, will you please read that sentence again, pausing at the phrases?
His inventions have improved the lives of millions of people.
Notice how I'm encouraging everyone to read phrase by phrase. All right, so Kathy, I know you started the last one. Deborah, of course you're drinking. Will you please, this sentence is awfully short. I'm going to go ahead and let you read that next one sentence.
Edison was not afraid to try.
Now, normally when I hear about trying, I'm trying something. So, Laura, do you have a thought about what he might be afraid to try?
Maybe he was afraid to try a new invention.
He is a great inventor. That's a great thought. Let's check and see if we get the answer in our next sentence. Lorna, will you read that first clause coming up? It's kind of long. If you need to, you can break it up after the first 4 words, but I think you might be able to read the whole thing to the comma.
Even when he failed with something new.
Thank you. Excellent job. Kathy, can you finish it up? The independent clause?
He did not give up.
Okay, so I think that answers our question, doesn't it, Laura? What's he afraid not to try? Anything, it seems like, because he's trying something new, he's failing and he's still going. So I might structure this for a paragraph or 2, and then I'm going to let go and let the kids continue reading on their own. But I've provided them this structure, this practice of reading in the clause by clause. I might, if I wanted to keep going with the next one, I might say, okay, now our next 2 words tell us when. In 1877, what happened? He made the first record player. Who's that he? It's that Thomas A. Edison, making that connection back for our kids who need it. This talking machine, what talking machine? What are we talking about? Oh, we're talking about the first record player. Notice how the reason why, and we might need to bring in some background information here, and the reason why they called it a talking machine is that the first records weren't music. They were audio of people talking. That was how we could record ourselves back in the day. That was on a record player. So helping them understand that background knowledge. His major invention, well, we haven't learned this yet, and then we talk about was the electric light. Notice how complex that is. We didn't say the electric light was his major invention. That would be a lot easier, wouldn't it? But we have to start with his major invention and then learn what that was. He invented this, what? The electric light. So you can see how complex just a really, really small paragraph could be for our kids. Okay. So I'm going to give you some time to, we're going to watch her do this a little bit. It's much longer than we had before. So I'm going to do a little bit of jumping around. And I have some notes about where I'm going to get to. And then we're going to give you an opportunity to practice and talk about this stuff. Okay. So, because you've been listening, I've been talking too much, you've been listening too long. So I'm going to pause this recording during the recording. I'm sorry, the video, and I'll also grab the link for you if you want on your own. All right, so finding, I'm going to skip forward 8 times to jump into where she starts the reading of text. And a hint for you on YouTube, you can skip forward by typing the letter O. Once it starts. Oh, I'm going to check, make sure I'm sharing with sound. Hold on. Like I said, it's been one of those days I had to make sure. Yes, we're good. All right.
What is it going to be about? C is going to be doing. We're going on holiday.
7. Oops, I hope I got it. 1,
2
7.
words, Grant. Tell me what.
Many plants
5 words. Tell us which ones.
that grow
Where? 3 words.
in our country.
Now, can you read that whole big phrase? Reread that.
Many plants that grow in our country
3 words. Tell us what they do.
come from seeds.
Read that whole sentence with good phrasing.
Many plants that grow in our country come from seeds.
The next word, Isa, means we're going in a different direction.
But
3 words tell what.
not all seeds
2 words tell us what they've done.
have come
The next 3 words tell us where.
to our country
4 words tell us how.
in the same way.
Read that whole thing with good phrasing.
But not all seeds have come to our country in the same way.
Malachi, you're going to reread that whole paragraph with good phrasing.
Many plants that grow
Can you
in
start from the beginning? I'm sorry, I didn't hear the first word.
many plants that grow in our country come from seeds, but not all seeds have come to our country in the same way.
Nicely done, Malachi. We're going to continue reading at the top of page 67, and we're just going to read one sentence with good phrasing. Keep going, Grant.
Okay, I'm going to skip it a
Some
little bit.
seeds were
'Cause I want you to get a chance to practice it and get a feel for it.
High-powered word. Brought.
brought.
Start from the beginning again.
Some seeds were brought by people coming to live here long ago.
Good. Nice and straight. There you go. Read that one more time. That was very good.
Some seeds
So what she's going to do now is that she's going to stop structuring after each phrase. She's going to have them read a sentence or 2 and discuss them. She's going to move to discussing grammar a bit, emphasizing and guiding the students to respond orally in complete sentences. Then she's going to ask the students to paraphrase. And then I'm going to just skip ahead for where she uses phrases to support reading again. Let me unmute.
brought by people
Out.
coming to live here long ago.
I'm gonna go about here.
Let's start again. Some. What do they do? 2 words.
Some may fall
Where?
in the grass.
Look at that word again. 2 syllables.
Ground. Some
Let's
may
do that. Let's do that again. I'll underline the letters that make the vowel sound.
Just gonna pause it for a moment. Notice that some is a little ambiguous there. What are we? Which some are we talking about? In this case, we're talking about some seeds. And she asked him to read those 2 words, may fall. So that may could be complex. Who uses may in their sentences? I mean, when I used the word the ought the other day, my daughter asked me if I was making things up. We don't use words like may and ought very much anymore. So some may fall. Then now he's struggling with the word garden. And notice how she said, I'm going to underline the 2 vowels. So she's trying to help get to the garden.
Garden. Read that sentence again.
Some may fall in the garden. Seeds are always on the go.
Excellent reading. You know what I want for you to do? I want you to go back to your seat. You're going to reread this to yourself, and you're going to answer the questions at the end.
Okay. So now's a chance for you to start exploring some of this, practicing it. Oops, I clicked twice. And then we'll have a whole group sharing about your thoughts on these. So I'm going to give you 2 passages in the chat. Oops, let me I'm going to re-record. Is a quote I wrote down from one of the sessions I attended at IDA. I think it was this one. Let's see. No. Yes. What are the oral language skills of students? If they cannot produce an oral narrative, we can't expect them to produce a written one.
Yes, that's what we say all the time. So we start off with like sentence frames and things. Sooner or later, you start tapering that off, and the other kids are like, I disagree because, and they start adding those pieces in. They learn to, like, always say, like, restate the question and answer.
Yes.
But
So,
it takes a lot of practice.
It does. It takes a lot of practice and putting your thoughts into complete sentences. So Trish has asked in the chat where to access prior recorded classes. And you'll find everything here. The ones from our session, if I can dig my head out of all of my emails, I try to put in here, and they only last for 30 days, but then my support provider translates them into another system. Sometimes they get put into YouTube. Sometimes they get put onto. So these are only available. So, for example, this 9/1/9/30, that one's gone. But I will put this link back into the chat. You can see some YouTube ones from previous courses. I will check and see if she has the newer version converted that we can keep. But I send them to her to convert to either YouTube or to put into Canvas to convert it that way as well, because they're only good for 30 days. So this is where I do put them when I have them. And that's, but if I don't have them, you can see previous versions as well that I've done. And I'll put this in the chat box so everyone can access all of those. So and I'm going to change that to, let's see, put that viewer, put that into the chat box for you. And let's hear who would like to talk first. I'm going to take us to our next slide, which is whole group sharing. What was surprising? What was affirmed? How did that feel? I did bring up for you the 2 different passages. This is a chunky one, and then the other one, in case we want to go through them as a whole group to kind of practice some of those. Yes, I'll put in the attendance link again. So which group would like to start off? And with which passage? I hope you had a good discussion. Feel free to open up. We don't have a large group today. Shannon, do you want to start?
I can try, yeah. You want me to read the phrases or?
Well, what did you guys talk about in your group? Did you try it?
We did kind of talked about having to go through it before, like be really prepared before the students even read it.
Yes.
But then for this one, like this is like it's a when phrase. Like
the one Sunday afternoon.
But then how would you know, like, for the next one, like it's not, I mean, I would have said a who phrase. It's like
so would I.
Jim's grandma. The answer is actually Jim's grandma filled. But
I would stick it with Jim's grandma. Did they do Jim's grandma filled on here, number here?
Yeah, up the top. But I thought a who phrase was better, and then a what phrase.
With you. That's why I said scroll down here. Don't look at what they did.
Okay. I only looked afterwards, to make sure I was doing it right.
One Sunday afternoon, Jim's grandma did what?
Build a big pot. would you do fill the big pot with, or just fill the big pot and then
I
how?
don't, you know, how, depending on how old your kids were and what they could handle, I might do, they fill the big pot with meat.
Okay.
Because with meat tells me how or what. I mean, this is a complex piece, isn't it? That she filled it with meat. Okay. And then I have a connecting word and something else. What else did she do?
Put it on the stove.
And then I'd have to talk about that it. What is it, isn't it? That's that big pot that she had filled with meat. It's complex, isn't it? Go ahead, keep us going. You either Shannon or someone else.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I don't know how to do a then. Like, is that a when?
This is a time, yeah, it's a when. It's a time word that tells us after.
Okay.
After she did that. Mm-hmm.
And then a what phrase?
She, okay.
Or a who. Then, yeah. A when and a who, and then a what phrase.
What did she do? She put in some water. Now, this is confusing because this isn't a prepositional phrase, in some water, because there's nothing in the water, is there? So this is what's called a phrasal verb, to put in, kind of like to turn on a light. You're not actually turning on the light. You're illuminating. The action is to turn on, and here the action is to put in. So it's called a phrasal verb. So what did she put in to the pot? She put in some water. So put in is your verb here, which is kind of complex and hard for our kids.
Okay. But would you do the then as its own phrase? Sorry, I'm not great with grammar.
You could, and you could, because it is a turning point word. Okay. Or you could say, you know what? I think you could handle this whole phrase or this whole clause. Then she put in some water. But I want us to keep in mind that put in is your action, isn't it? Okay. But then she put in some water. With lots of potatoes. Yeah. Now that's interesting, because did the water have lots of potatoes before she put it in? Or did she put in some water and lots of potatoes? This is interestingly written, isn't it? And some onions and some celery. Difficult one for us to talk about. Okay, you can do the next one. Next phrase tells us what?
When.
What happened?
Yeah, she cut up some carrots to put in the pot, or why? Okay.
To put in the pot. Which pot? The pot of stew. Okay. Then we've got much clearer. She put in beans, peas, and tomatoes. But then again, here's that phrasal to put in. Because it's not in beans, peas, and tomatoes. The beans, peas, and tomatoes are in the pot. So you see that implied thing. This is something we do in speech all the time. Oh, I put in the beans. But where did you put them? Well, there was that implied piece that's really hard for some of our kids. All right, lastly, we have another when, then. What happened?
She added some salt and pepper.
All right, so added is our verb. And what did she add? Some salt and pepper. Complex, isn't it? Thank you for taking that on, Shannon. Thanks. Everyone should give her a round of applause. Did anyone take a look at the other one? What was the other one? Sam's Day Outside. I think that's
we looked at it too, but you have to, like the as soon as, and you have to make sure they really know who he is, because sometimes he is Matt and sometimes he is Sam.
As soon as Matt opened the door, why did he open it? To come into the house. Sam ran out as fast as he could. Here's another phrasal verb, ran out. Out where? Out of what? Out of the house. So it's complex. There's an implied where there. Thank you, Marawa. She said that she listened into room 3. How did that feel? What are some things that you talked about? Do we see that this could be helpful for the students? But I heard someone, I think it was, thank you for jumping in, Shannon. It's complex for us. We have to think about this before we approach it, don't we?
Yeah, when we looked at the second, the comment was that it would be very good to break it down and then be able to read it through completely, because it would make so much more sense to them if they read it through completely first. We all agreed they wouldn't really know with all the he's and
Mhm.
who's running and where
Mhm.
they are. But you would
Mhm.
figure that out if you broke it down in
Mm.
phrases.
Yep, he ran and ran. Finally, he was free. We don't, this is Sam we're talking about, aren't we? Okay. The garage door was open and he was outside. Okay, we see that two different things. And actually, this comes to Cherry's question here with the comma, the semicolon and comma. Because I have a subject, the garage door, and verb was open, and I have he was outside, this is actually a run-on sentence without putting a comma here. So if I didn't have the and, I could put a semicolon because I have subject verb combined by a semicolon or by a comma and a conjunction. Go ahead, Dabby.
We talked briefly in our group. I don't even know if I should say this, but I found this whole experience super painful because I just want to read it. And like I learned to read relatively easily. And so we were talking about how it'd be good for a small group instruction, but maybe not always whole group. Because you'll have kids that learned how I read just really fast, and it's so painful to go so slow. But there's other kids that really need it. And so to be able to break that up is important.
Abby, I'm really glad you brought that up because when I used this, I taught at a school for kids with dyslexia. All my kids were on that same page and they all struggled and needed it. And that was with the small group that you saw in the video. Those were a small group of kids who were at the same level and they definitely need this. And I wouldn't do this for every passage in the entire piece. I would do it for a paragraph so they get into the flow of reading phrase by phrase instead of word by word. And then I let them go on their own and they do a little bit of reading to themselves and then we'll come back and talk about it and make those connections. But it's a pattern that I want them to help build that reading phrase by phrase instead of word by word. And if you have your kids who are already there, great, you let them go. But if you have your kids who are reading word by word, stop. And instead of reading one word at a time, let's read 2 at a time or 4 at a time or 5 at a time, depending on the context and what those phrases are. Thanks, Darren, for adding a semicolon that's in there for us. Morales says, Kathy did a great job putting the pause lines and the others ladies contributed. Fantastic. Good collaboration in your group. Complex, isn't it? There's a lot of really tough stuff. And our texts can be either really supportive or not at all. So let me close this off and I'm going to show you some examples. I do have some that I've taken pictures, screenshots of, but I also brought some here. What's fascinating to me is sometimes you can find supportive texts and non-supportive texts by the same authors and the same. And when I say supportive and non-supportive, take a look at this. Look at where we're stopping. And this one's, I'm trying to remember which ones are better here. Okay. Notice how we have George's tooth began to what? To hurt. I would want that all in the same line. The man, that shouldn't be separated either. Look at the one I just pulled up. Down in the street, outside the prison wall, stood a balloon man. It doesn't matter it's all flowing like this, but it's phrase by phrase. Stood a balloon man. A little girl bought a balloon. Why? For her brother. George watched. He was curious again. He must have what? A bright red balloon. And so that one on the right is much more supportive than the ones on the left. And I find it fascinating. I have a whole bunch of these where you can see this one is completely flush. And this one, let's see, this one, actually, this one wasn't so bad. Let me try this other one. Is this the bad one or good one? I have to remember. Oh yeah, this one's completely flush. Not helpful at all. But then we get this one. And I absolutely love this example here. Look at this. Can you see that okay, Abby? Okay. With the hook on the string. Where's that hook? It's on the string. And the string on the stick. So where's the string? It's on the stick. It's so clear and supportive. And the cake in the box, in his hand. George went back, where? To the lake. Every phrase is on a different line. But then you get something like this with a 4th thing. And And notice how we say, I'm going to take you to a big zoo. This one actually is pretty good. That's not the best. This is a good one where you can see instead of having it flush, they having it phrase supportive. So he and the man with the yellow hat, what did they do? Walked off the ship onto the shore and on into the city to the man's house. So some of our texts are more supportive and some are not. And we have to think about that as we're helping them. Like this one. Oh my gosh, we've got a flush. When he was safely out of the house, that does not natural, is it? When he was safely out of the house should be better. He first did what? Turned off the tap. Okay, that one's not bad. But what next? How could he get rid of that's not too bad before his friend? So it's breaking those phrases unnaturally. It should be before his friend came home or before his friend came home. So are they trying to have it flush or are they trying to have it supportive? And those are the two things I want us to think about with the texts we give them on our kids who need this phrase by phrase, and also again supports their understanding. Thanks, Cherry. It is tough. It is tough. Okay, so that is supporting and structuring it. Now, those are all in preparation and during reading. Here's again that main idea of what are we talking about? And these guys, it was George. That was easy, but that Sam one was really hard. Who is Sam and who's this about? What's that most important information about Sam? And then how can I help write a gist sentence? Because this is going to help me summarize later after reading. This is one of the most important things for our kids is to recognize the who and what, and then what's about it. Everything okay, Janice? Okay, we're going to do just a little more, and then I want you guys to have another opportunity to talk to each other. Here are some resources for you to have some questions to think about as you're reading. Now, Abby, I'm like you. I want to read it through and not to pause a lot of that. But depending on the text. So I will say, frankly, when I read Joy Luck Club, I needed to stop constantly. And I needed a graphic organizer, and I needed to say, okay, who was a tennis person? Who was a chess person? And what were this relation? Who was her mom? I needed to take notes on that one. So that was a great example for me of some of our kids who struggle on something that I would find much more easy to navigate. So we have to think of our kids and what they need in order to make these connections, especially when you have so many of those pronouns and that one with put in and take out and going out of. It's complex. We have to help make sure they're with us along the way to get there. So I have a couple resources here for during reading. How can we help get our kids to be asking questions or writing questions and thinking about, is it a skinny question or is it a fat question? Is it something that's really in the text? Those are our 5 WH, who, where, when, or is it something that's going to take some more thought and connections? And so I put a link in for you about those think beyond the questions. I'm thinking thick and thin, but I want to pull it up too because I really like, and I want to show you, direct you to the kinds of questions because they separate it out too versus in narrative versus expository as soon as it comes up. Should have had it up ahead of time. Okay, so this is the thin questions or skinny and fat questions, simple answers or a long answer, and you have to think to yourself, well, let's go beyond just our who or what. Oh, go away. To which one and how might it happen or why would it happen? And so here are some cards that you could use to kind of prompt you with those more questions. I love these where the blue ones I think are the narrative. Who did what, when, where, why? And then here are some deeper questions. What's happening? What's it about? Where would this, you visualize it? Could you imagine? Why are you picturing it that way? And then the other one here is for the nonfiction, the informational texts. Again, we have who, did what, when, where, and why, though. And this one is giving more, what's this passage about? How is your thinking changing? So some prompts for you as well. I put that into the chat box, didn't I? Yes. Okay, good. Thank you. All right. So a couple more things. some reminders of different things we can do for reading, building our reading comprehension. This came from the National Reading Panel. We've talked about some of these already, but the number one I want to talk about for a moment is comprehension monitoring. So Abby, you had mentioned how, and I think others had said, I need to get through it to understand it. Sometimes our kids think they get it and they don't. and so when they say, well, just monitor, do you understand it? No. So that's where we have to ask them to verbalize to us what they're understanding so we can clarify whether or not they're really with us. So something comprehension monitoring is sometimes helpful for me to say, wait a minute, that didn't make sense. Or that would be what I call a clunk, not a click. A click would be something that works for me. I got it. It came to, it connects in with something I already know. I can click it in, like a piece seatbelt. But a clunk would be, it's not working for me. I don't quite get that. So we have to help sometimes them recognizing that it's not making sense. The cooperative learning is a great tool for helping our kids be supportive of each other. We've talked a little bit about graphic and semantic organizers a lot, question answering and just question generation. Story structure is useful to help them understand what to expect. Now, I will be honest, even though I was just I was trained to be a high school special ed teacher. When it comes to the hero's journey and the story arc and the denouement and the climax and the resolution, it's just when I'm reading a story, I don't see those. I don't feel it. Not with you. I'm enjoying the story. So I'm the last person to talk to about story structure. But for our kids to know what to expect, especially if they're in the moment of that climax, this is going to get resolved. You don't have to, you'll just keep with us and don't stop here and you'll get the resolution. It's going to all work out. I love Darren, you put in Kagan. I love Kagan. I'm thinking classrooms, I'm going to have to go and check out some more because yes, cooperative learning, there are so many structures. I would love to chat more. I could do a whole class on cooperative learning. But we don't have time for that. We're going to get into summarization because that's one of the hardest things for our kids is summarizing. So this one comes from Read, Write, Think Classroom, a resource I'm going to put into the chat box for you. And the who is this about is sometimes easy and sometimes not. The what is it about? So this is really what we're looking for is what's that gist? How do I take those gist statements and make a summary? So how do I make sure that when I say delete redundancy, I don't need to worry about how many different kinds of trees. Let's just call them trees. That's the exemplars with the superordinate term as well. If I say I need to only look for what's the most crucial piece, not all these additional details. What's that most crucial piece? And that's that topic sentence that I might find or have to create one. And this is that wrap strategy as far as for summarization, asking yourself, what are you reading it? Asking yourself, what were those main idea and details and putting it into your own words. Again, easier for some of our kids than the others. Okay, I do have some reminders for instruction that I put into the Jamboard that you will be able to have an opportunity to look at when you have your next and last breakout. Just that I want you to discuss how we read differently I think I put those ones in. Let me double check it. I did put reminders for instruction, but let's make sure that it's the same one, in which case I will give you a moment to do that. And I'll put this into the chat box for you as well. There we go. Discuss rereading it. Yep, those are just the coloring that's different, but it's the same content. Okay. So as I mentioned when I read Joylet Club, I needed to slow down and really pay attention. Even though it was fiction, it was complex. When on number one, if I'm going to be reading something to remember it, you should see my texts where they're all around me. I have annotations. I'm sure no one here is surprised by this. You've relearned me already. I'll put a little triangle in the corner on the side if it means it's a definition, or I'll put a little percent symbol to me means an example. I have created my own symbols to help me recognize very quickly. It's instead of just underlining because I might not remember why I was underlining it. So I'll put a little something in the margin. So that's my strategy for complex text that I want to come back to and look at. If I'm reading a novel, it's going to be very different. And I'm just going to be immersed in it and maybe talking about it with my kids or how we're enjoying that together. And of course, if I'm doing a strategy like my annotations, I want to make sure I'm explaining it and modeling it and talking about when it's useful and giving them lots of opportunities to practice it and thinking aloud while I'm using it. And of course, giving them independent strategy use. So that's some reminders for thinking about supporting our kids' reading comprehension. It is really, really complex. And we're going to bring all these pieces back together briefly. When we think about language comprehension, it's understanding all of these pieces, how they fit together. So reading comprehension is so much more than getting just the words off the page. It's also understanding them and how they're being used. So when I'm coming back to that word reading, though, and remember that we want to make sure that for our word reading kids, to prevent the issues, we are making sure they understand their phonemes. So I think some of you in here are working with kindergartners or younger. Can't remember who was our K person in here. I see some SPED. Making sure that they're understanding the sound symbol connections and they're getting lots of opportunities to read connected text, but supportive ones, not those ones with some of these, like this one. This I'm going to read to my kids. The other one, this one where I've got the really nice one. Where'd that one go? With the on the stick on the stool. This is one I'd want to have them working and practicing their own because it's really supportive. So again, supportive versus not supportive kinds of text. Those of you with older kids, who need to be remediating, I see some special ed in here. Let's make sure again that we eliminate those phonological awareness deficits. What do they need? Is this my vanishing pen? Let's make sure we pay attention to any holes in their phonological awareness. Make sure that they can blend, segment, manipulate those sounds. Remember, let's make sure that they can connect those sounds to the letters in spelling and for reading. And again, lots of reading connected text. As a reminder, the connected text that is decodable is really useful for whatever code that they're practicing, or whatever patterns. And then when you want to give them natural text for them to see how often those kind of patterns occur in natural text. And, oh, Stephanie, good to know decodables are in kinder. I'll get you a whole list of decodables as well. Because most important is to help make sure that we are effective reading instruction, whether you are preventing or you're intervening. Phonemic awareness, phonemic decoding, that fluency in word recognition and text processing, construction of meaning or discovery of meaning is really finding what that is, vocabulary, spelling, and writing. What does this look like across the grades? Thank you, Jennifer. We want to make sure that we are looking at both the word reading skills and the language comprehension across the grades all the time. I love this image because it's helping us recognize my language comprehension is going to go on forever, isn't it? Hopefully, our kids, by the time they finish 5th grade, have your foundational skills. Those of us who've taught special education, middle school and high school, no, they don't always. But nonetheless, it's important to think about their decoding skills. Always, too, though, refining them and transferring them to new concepts. And the same thing goes for writing. We want to be able to make sure that we're paying attention to their handwriting, their grammar going on all the time, their conventions, punctuation, capitalization, but their understanding of text structure and their background knowledge for what they're going to write is going on forever. So I'm going to put the link into this resource, and we have one last activity for you to do and one more breakout. And it's going to be a great one to wrap it all up, but it's going to be a great food for thought. Okay. So, I do have a sample lesson plan first. How do we bring all these pieces together? This comes from the Slingerland lesson plan. And it's just a sample. I'm going to put it into the chat for you where you can see actually dictation happening if you want to look at that piece of it. But you can see in the Slingerland lesson plan that we are always practicing and learning letters. And what you don't see actually before this is an oral language practice where we are giving them a question of the day and we're working on saying things in complete sentences. And maybe early on, I'm going to start with an easy question like, what's your favorite color? I'm going to move on to tell me what your favorite food is and why. And I want you to answer your next question using the word although. And so you're building their oral language skills. And then you can see we're working on the auditory side, which is the writing, and we're working on the visual side, which is the reading. Always building on those skills. All right. Your last task is in your Jamboard. So I'm going to go grab that link for you. And I'm going to cue you up onto our last tasks. So I have to get my thing here and grab the Jamboard link, because this is actually two pieces. We might want to, you can either have a discussion and let people move it for you, or if you want to have your own, remember that you can make a copy of the Jamboard by going to these three little dots, and you can make a copy. And this way each group can have its own if you like. A few people have had to leave, so I might need to rearrange groups a little bit to make sure we have enough people. But you'll notice, so we still have, if you haven't yet put where you're from, please do so. And I wish I knew where the Lumi Nation was. Marawa, you can add it in wherever it feels appropriate. Then we have parking lot, if you have any last questions or thoughts that haven't been addressed yet. We have those National Reading Panel recommendations I mentioned, those reminders, and here's your task. So 1, to look through and of course can't have any conversation about things we've been talking about. But then 2, I want you to take a look at these student errors. And is it a syntax error that talks about how the words are put together? Is it a semantics error that talks about the meanings? Is it a discourse error, which is how we use language? Is it phonology, which is the sounds, morphemes, which is the meaningful parts, and orthography, which is the written form? So you'll move these around to where you believe they go. And I'm not paying attention to the words behind me, so don't think I'm giving you any hints on this. Alternatively, there's also a reflection piece for you to add on something. I'll put that one closer to us. A reflection from your learning. Thank you. Next to Bellingham, I appreciate that. So you can either add in your own reflection, or I also sometimes find it useful to kind of create an elevator pitch. What is something that you've learned that you want to take with you? All right, so I'm going to put breakout rooms for one last time, and then we'll come back and share and be done with our 14 hours. So I'm going to Zoom recording and have a conversation. You can either talk about your elevator speech, your reflection. Looks like some of these. I love, someone says, I appreciate whoever that little anonymous camel is. I feel like I know nothing. The more we know we don't know, right? And the more then we go on this journey with our kids and we say, let's find out. Yes. And I think that's the beauty of it, is we say, you know what, I'm not the expert on this. Let's learn it together. Mm-hmm. So thank you I appreciate that. And whoever used the word inspire, I have done my job. Thank you. Because that is what I hope to do, is to help us to recognize that there's so much more we can learn, and it's fun. Language is exciting, and it's okay. I know I'm a geek, but I'll stop now. So let's see, how do we do on this? Looks like you all chose one, but they're kind of across the mouth. So who wants to talk through, and let's pick one for each category. Or you can just share with us what you talked about in your room. We have time for a couple of sharings.
I can go.
Okay, Stephanie, go ahead.
Okay, so let me know the one I am for sure about is student is unable to segment speech sounds and spoken words, and that was phonology, which phonemic awareness. You cannot break apart a word, say the sounds. You do not have phonemic awareness.
I will change it to green for go, because yes, you are correct on that one. And that definitely, look how it affects not just reading though. it also affects our remembering of words that we have read, and it affects our poor memory for names, and so that's there's a lot more that goes on there with that. Thank you, Stephanie. Keep me going. Deborah, I think I saw you unmuting.
Well, no, I wasn't sure what to answer because I found this actually a very challenging task. We had a student, so on the middle and the bottom, student uses wrong verb forms, student uses wrong pronouns, student sneaks in short and or incomplete sentences. We had that as syntax, is that right?
Yes, why did you think so?
I can't remember. We had a discussion about it and it made sense to all three of us. So, you know, we had to look some of these words up again, just to make sure we had the right one chosen. So,
and that's okay. You only got 2 hours on each topic. You'll have to come back for more.
And you know, it just really gives me an appreciation for why the students, like I work with K2, and why they're so overwhelmed.
Our language is really complex, isn't it? And you were learning something new, just like they learned something new. So it's a great experience for you to be going through that.
Yeah.
Trish, were you in that same group, or do you have something else to add too?
We were in a different group, but definitely we had to look things up as well.
Would you like to tackle another one? We have 2 so far.
Would orthography be in the upper left?
That is exactly, Janice. What was a clue that made you think so?
Well, I just think because they can't, both the remembering and then mixing up that rule, like sequences.
Remember that CK at the beginning of the word instead of the end. That's definitely the spelling pieces. This comes from Louisa Moats, and I think it's a great way to look at their errors and know how to help.
And then another one that we thought was discourse on the top right. But we kind of bounced back and forth between others, so help us with that.
All right, so I think this one, the keywords are vocabulary and meanings and synonyms, antonyms, and analogies. This one is our semantics. And the reason I'm going to make that green is because the discourse is bigger than that. So that's looking at the ideas and details and exhibiting comprehension during read alouds. And the organized and disorganized in the retell. Remember when I said that if a kid can't tell a narrative, he can't write a narrative? That's what you're looking at here, is that larger units of language is the discourse. It's how it's used.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. So that leaves by process of elimination. Word endings, that's our suffixes. Meaningful parts are morphemes. Prefixes and suffixes, that would be our morphology here. So I'm going to make that one green. Complex, there's a lot going here. And like I said, you only had 2 hours for each topic. So it's a start. And I love that whoever said, I'm inspired to learn more. Please come back. We have a full day on phonology coming up next week on the 15th. Then we'll do a full day on sound symbol correspondences in December. Let me grab the link to all of those for you so you can access and join in. They're all on PD Enroller, but if you go to the OSPI about dyslexia page, hopefully it hasn't moved. Yay! You can come here to a flyer of all my classes so you can get to see them in chronological order. Starting there with the phonology, sound symbol correspondence, syllabification, morphology, syntax, semantics, and then we have a repeat of my intro to dyslexia class. This one is just orthography and morphology. And then here's the repeat of the one we just finished. So 14 hours, give yourselves a round of applause. And I do thank you all for sharing and growing. And my last thing I will leave with you is my contact and resources. Have a great night, everyone. A great Thanksgiving. And I'll make sure that you have all the things you can take with you to learn and continue. So thank you very much. And I think you all have been fantastic. I'm
Thank
so glad I
you.
got to spend a bit more time with you all, and I look forward to the next time.